Where is that buzz, that morning buzz, that excitement of being back? Thank you all for being here today. And for those who are with us, joining us from home, next week may be your opportunity to come and celebrate being back in the sanctuary as well. So we'll have another round of applause next week. Chrissy and I get to do it twice, which is wonderful. It is great. Oh, I can't say how great it is. It is great to see all of you here. It's been a long haul. It was March 6th of 2020 was the last time that we all were able to occupy this space together. That is a long, long time. I can't wait for the day now when I can see all of your faces. But I thank you for staying masked, for keeping safe, for helping all of us keep safe by wearing your masks today. Wow, my prepared sort of thoughts have all gone out of my head. So I am, as always, so grateful to be leading worship with you today with Chrissy Bushyeager, our Director of Religious Education, with Joy Thiessen, who is in her little box in the corner there, because Joy is going to be offering our music today. And so one of the restrictions we have in order to keep people safe is that we are not going to be singing, even though we are masked. So during the songs and the hymns, I invite you to hum along if you'd like, but we're not able to sing out of an abundance of caution. We just don't have the air circulation. We don't want to put people at risk by congregational singing. So we ask you to just remain in your seats, and as I say, if you'd like to, you can hum along. I do want to offer a great big thank you to our tech people today. You can't see them back in behind the glass there. They have the lights turned down, but Don Sloat, Patrick Stagel, Nolan Huff, Will Evans, and John Davies are here supporting us. And then we have our greeters as well, our hospitality team. We're so grateful for that. And online, let's say hi to our online people. We can't see them, but they can see us. So we'll give them a wave. And Soren Spring is our online host for those who are joining us via Zoom. Let's see, Chrissy, I know we have more announcements to make, right?
We do.
Before you make that, the one I remember is the silent auction continues until 5 p.m. tonight. So if you are bidding on anything in the silent auction, please make sure to watch because you might get outbid. So it's open till 5 o'clock. And I also just want to thank the auction team and all the auctioneers for last night's amazing live auction as well.
Yeah, the auction closes at 5, and the Yucky, our youth group, our Young Unitarian Universalist Combined for Knowledge and Interest, that's our high school youth group. They are running a 50-50 auction along with a 50-50 raffle along with the auction. That also closes at 5, so you can still buy tickets to support the Yuckies for a 50-50 raffle. I want to let people know that Fellowship Hall, which is directly across from where we are right now, is open as a space for families with children who may want to move around a little bit during this service. We have some coloring pages over there. Families with children are always welcome in the sanctuary. But if you want to be in a spot that allows for a little more freedom of movement, that space is open. There's a monitor and speakers in there, so you will be able to be part of the service while also being in a slightly more laid back environment if that works for you. And for our friends on Zoom, there will be a Zoom coffee hour after church. You'll be put into a breakout room and you can enjoy that as well. I think that's everything.
That sounds like it's kind of good enough. So now Joy will play our opening hymn, and it's one of my favorites, and it is, I think, very appropriate for today. It's "May Nothing Evil Cross This Door." And I invite you, as I said earlier, if you know the tune, to hum along, but we'll hear Joy sing it for us.
Never
Please join me in the recitation of our covenant, which will appear, it's on our screens now. Enriched by our differences and joined together in our search for meaning, we covenant with ourselves and each other to seek truth in a spirit of love, to strive for justice, and to serve others with a joyful heart.
Now I'd like to invite the Kowalski family to come forward and light our chalice. We light our chalice this morning with these words that are written by the Reverend Andrew C. Kennedy, who is Minister Emeritus of First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. We come to love a church, the traditions, the history, and especially the people associated with it. And through these people, young and old, known and unknown, we reach out, both backward into history and forward into the future, to link together the generations in this imperfect but blessed community of memory and hope. Thank you so much. And now our UUCDC choir will join us virtually for singing our centering song. And once again, I invite you here to hum along. Those at home can sing freely, so belt it out. One of the ways that we hold each other is by recognizing the joys and sorrows that we carry. We do that each week by dropping stones into a bowl of water. The stones representing our joy or sorrow, the water representing this community. And just as the stone that's dropped into the water is surrounded by it, so is the person who drops the stone, surrounded by the love and care of this community. I invite you now, as you are moved, to come forward and drop a stone of joy or sorrow. And those at home, if you have a stone, you may drop it or hold it, or simply call to mind the joy or sorrow that you have. And I invite you to type that into the chat. All are invited. I will drop 2 stones into the bowl, one representing all the joys and sorrows that are with those who are joining us online, and the other for all the joys and sorrows for members of this community who are not with us either here physically or via Zoom. Let us take a time now to pray, to offer up our gratitude, to hold that which is on our hearts together. Spirit of life and love, great and gracious God, love that moves in us and through us with our breath, our sacred connection to all that is. We are so grateful in this moment to be together in so many ways. And in this particular moment, I call to mind the healers, the helpers, those who have been able to bring us safely to this day, those who have worked on developing vaccines, including vaccines now for children. Oh my goodness, we are so grateful for them. We are grateful for the healers, the first responders, the medical caregivers, those who have walked this journey through the darkness for the past more than 1.5 years. May they feel our gratitude, experience our gratitude so that their energy, which we know is flagging, can be lifted. Let us give thanks for those who have sustained and maintained this institution, our sacred faith, all of those who have so generously given of their time, their talents, their energy, their money over this time. It feels like such a landmark to be able to be here in this room again, and there are so many who have led us to this point. Let us recognize and hold those who are hurting today, those who are grieving the loss of loved ones, those who are walking a path of depression or anxiety, fear, concern. May they know that they are not alone. And for those who are experiencing great joy today, we give thanks for you and all that lifts you up, because when you are lifted, so are we. We especially share in the joy of Bob and Rhonda Rowland today, whose daughter was married yesterday. And let us offer up one final prayer, and that is a prayer for peace. A prayer for peace in our homes, in our hearts, in our communities, in our nation, in our world. May we know peace. May we be peace. May we always strive to be instruments of peace. We offer up all these prayers in the name of all that is holy and in all the holy names. Amen. And now I invite you to rise, and we're going to not sing Spirit of Life, but we will do the motions together. Christy and I will lead you in those motions as, I think we have the choir leading us on Spirit of Life. So let's rise in body and spirit and join in the motions. This is the Spirit of Life. Thank you. You may be seated. Now is the time in our service where we gratefully accept the morning's offering to support this church and its work in the world. We do that as we've come to electronically. You'll see the instructions on the screen here and at home, and you can use your smartphone to text that your donation. We accept and gratefully accept any donation. And if you feel like you'd like to use a check, everybody remember what a check is? We do have boxes at the back of the sanctuary. As you exit out today, you can leave your donation in there if that's easier for you than using the technology. But all of your gifts are gratefully received now.
Good morning. Good morning. Do you like pie? Yes. So what kind of pie do you like? Now, if you're on Zoom, you can put it in the chat, your favorite kind of pie. If you're over in Fellowship Hall, just yell it out to whoever's there. Here in the sanctuary, what are your favorite pies? Apple. Sweet potato, okay. Pumpkin. Apple, pumpkin, berry. Ooh, chocolate pecan online. Okay. A lot of pumpkins. Everybody's thinking about pie. Okay. Okay, great. We don't need to hear them all. My family has been talking about pie all week. We've been talking about what pie we want to order from the Yucky Pie Sale. Our youth are selling pies as they do every year around this time. I like, from the Yucky Sale, from those choices, I like chocolate pie the best. Apple second. I'm not a huge fan of pumpkin pie. I'll eat it like once a year. I don't really like pecan pie. My gosh. My kids also like chocolate pie the best. My wife, Jen, loves pecan pie and pumpkin pie. Oh, she has a lot of support in this community. Good. So what do? How do we decide which pie to order from the Yucky Pie Sale? Now, if we were using a democratic system, a simple vote, we would order chocolate pie. It would be 3 votes to 1, right? And some of us would be happy, and one of us would not be happy. Now, we could get apple pie, which is everybody's like second or third choice. And we would all like it well enough, but it would be nobody's favorite. So that would be a compromise. We could get 2 pies or 3 pies, but that's a lot of pie to eat. 60 years ago, the Unitarians and the Universalists were talking about how to make a compromise that worked for everyone. They were not talking about pie. They were talking about faith. And they had been having this conversation for a very long time. You know, Unitarianism and Universalism were different faiths. Both gained a lot of members during the 1800s and early 1900s because they were offering something that people really wanted at that time. At that time, the prevailing religion was a version of Christianity that emphasized good behavior and talked about God as being 3 parts, who had many enemies and would punish those who were disobedient. The early Unitarians believed that God was one being whose nature was loving. The Universalists also believed in a loving God who didn't punish people. And they added the thought that humans were inherently valuable and worthy of that love. Those two messages really resonated with the people of that time. Now, Unitarian and Universalist thinking evolved over time. It was influenced by other ideas and by each other. There had been talk about merging since 1899, but the merger conversation didn't really begin until the middle of the 20th century. And that was when the Unitarians and Universalists had to decide how to become together, how to be together. It was not easy. They were located in different parts of the country, centralized in different parts, and had different ways of organizing their church structure and their money. There were a lot of conversations about how to organize the combined association and how to distribute that combined money. Grown-ups can get really anxious when talking about money. There were a lot of discussions about beliefs and practice and how to combine Unitarian and Universalist faith. There were a lot of debates about exactly which words to use and what order to put those words in. Everyone had things about their Unitarian or Universalist faith that was important to them. Some people were afraid that those things would be lost. The things that they loved would be lost forever if the two faiths merged. Some people were excited about the possibilities of a combined UU faith. And some people were not thrilled with the idea, but they understood why it made sense, and they were willing to go along with it. Not everyone got exactly what they wanted. When the Unitarians and Universalists merged in 1961, coming of age youth remembered 1961, because they're going to be learning about this later. But in the end, most Unitarian and Universalist congregations supported the merger. When you're in a family or a faith community, it can be hard to make decisions, especially when those decisions involve some kind of compromise. We don't always get exactly what we want. Some things are gained and some things are lost. Sometimes when I'm asked to make a decision, especially one that involves some compromise, I like to remind myself that it doesn't have to be this way forever. If we eat pecan pie this year, maybe we'll pick a different flavor next year. There will always be more pie, and our church will continue to grow and change. My family still hasn't placed our pie order, but we will soon, because 2 more weeks to get your pie orders in. And in the end, I may not get my first choice of pie, but that's okay. I'm willing to give pumpkin or even pecan another chance. After all, it's still pie.
For my musical offering today, I'm going to sing you a song called Give Love by Andy Grammer. And I was hoping that you could help me. I was hoping that you could sort of make some rhythm along with me, because it's better with rhythm. So I don't know who many of you remember that's exactly what I'd like you to do. Can you join me on that? Oh, thank you. It's going to be so much better with rhythm. reason why. I give love to all of my people, all of my people need love, I give some. I give love to all of my people, all of my people need love, I give some. I give love to all of my people, all of my people need love, I give some. 'Cause in the end the loves we take's got nothing on the love we make, so give love. So give love. So give love. Thank you for giving love back.
That may have been the first rap number we've done in the sanctuary. It's certainly the first in a long time, we can guarantee that. I was watching our resident drummer the whole time, keeping beat with Jeff. So I have to admit that I was a little disappointed last spring when no one lavished me with diamonds. It was, after all, our 60th anniversary, as Chrissy pointed out. It was 60 years ago that we saw the unification of the Unitarians and the Universalists to become the UU, sometimes called a consolidation, sometimes called a merger, even a marriage. It was in 1961 that the member congregations of the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America finally got together after decades of dancing and flirtation. There are probably fewer than a dozen of us here today who remember the before time when there were Unitarians and there were Universalists, but not Unitarian Universalists. But those who do likely remember that the courtship, as Chrissy pointed out, the courtship was rather rocky, and that the wedding itself was something of a marriage of convenience. Two small and struggling religious denominations who shared some common values, but not necessarily common beliefs or cultures, came together to help ensure the survival of liberal religion in America. Now, this sermon isn't going to be a history lesson per se about the consolidation, but I think it's good to know a few more facts about it than what Chrissy has shared already. You need to know that historically, the Unitarians were more urban-based, and the Universalists were more rural. Boston was the center of the Unitarian universe, while Universalists were more missionary, planting churches in small towns from Maine to California. As one historian put it, for many years, Unitarianism remained focused on Boston, with Harvard as its intellectual center and its clergy mostly Harvard trained, while Universalism flourished as primarily a grassroots rural phenomenon, the seeds being planted by itinerant preachers. So that's one important thing to know. The next one is that the two U's were theologically similar, but they weren't aligned. Chrissy alluded to this as well. Unitarians rejected the divinity of Jesus, claiming God as one being, while Universalists embraced Jesus and his relationship to God. Where Unitarians were more concerned with the nature of God itself, Universalists were focused on the relationship between God and man. The doctrine of universal salvation was a core principle of Universalists, while the intellectually elite Unitarians largely ignored questions of the afterlife. The Reverend Thomas Starr King, a Universalist preacher, sardonically summed up the differences between the two faiths this way. He said, Universalists believe that God is too good to damn them, while Unitarians believe that they are too good to be damned. And more recently, it was said that if upon their death, a Unitarian was given a choice between going to heaven or going to a debate about the existence of heaven, they would always choose the debate. Where the Unitarians and the Universalists found common ground was in their commitment to social action and creating a just and peaceful world. They also shared a dogmatic commitment to religious freedom and the rejection of dogma, and a right to individual expression of conscience. One more aspect. While merger of these two denominations was considered as long ago as the late 19th century, again, Chrissy alluded to this, it wasn't until both denominations were struggling in post-World War II America that discussions began in earnest. And as in many cases, it was the children who led them. The youth groups of both denominations actually merged long before the denominations themselves. In 1954, the two youth groups of the Unitarians and the Universalists shed their individual identities, consolidated, and formed something called the Liberal Religious Youth. The Liberal Religious Youth. Jeff, were you one? And Martis? Yeah, we got a few who were LRY. So that's awesome. The process of consolidation was rocky and nearly didn't happen. There were significant arguments over the language of our core principles, the inclusion or exclusion of references to Jesus being a central hot-button issue among them. They also argued over minutiae, such as the name of the merged association. Should it be, which one should be named first, the Unitarians or the Universalists? And should there be a hyphen between them? These were stumbling blocks to the merger. And they eventually, though, landed on Unitarian Universalist Association. Finally, all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed, and in 1961, two separate denominations became one. And that's not to say that all Unitarian and Universalist congregations jumped on the bandwagon. When I was an intern minister back in 2004 and 5, I served a congregation in Augusta, Maine, that didn't become Unitarian Universalists. They were a historically Universalist congregation. They didn't vote to become UU until the 1990s, almost 30 years after the official merger. And I just want to point out that the founders of our congregation were Unitarians, and the official corporate name of this church is still the First Unitarian Society of Delaware County. We might want to look into that. So as I said, this is all information. It's important background for where I'd like to take us today. And there's one more piece that I want to offer. As the consolidation of the two denominations was considered, then debated, and ultimately accomplished, many Universalists were reluctant to merge. They didn't want this kind of pie, even though I can't believe you don't like pecan. That just shakes me to my core. So there were Universalists who were very reluctant around the merger. The reluctance stemmed from feelings of intellectual inferiority to the highly educated and well-heeled Unitarians. But there was also a deep-seated cultural chasm between the two that the Universalists feared would result in the loss of their identity. It was a head versus heart kind of dichotomy. Universalists feared that the strongly humanist Unitarians would become the dominant force, theologically and culturally, in the merged faith. Submerged, not merged, was a phrase that was used by some of these Universalists in the run-up to the consolidation. And the truth is that is pretty much what happened. Post-merger, the Unitarian theology, which was dominated by the humanist movement, became the prevalent theology in UU congregations. The joke used to be that the only time you heard the name Jesus Christ uttered in a UU church was when the janitor stubbed his toe. Not a funny joke to the Universalists. The Christian roots of our faith were actively rejected, and those who embraced any elements of Christianity were alienated and even to a degree persecuted. We threw the baby Jesus out with the bathwater. Unitarian Universalists were all about enriching their minds rather than growing their souls. Heads dominated hearts. In fact, in many Unitarian Universalist congregations in the late 20th century, a sermon wasn't called a sermon. It was a message. It was even a talk or a platform. Many UUs created idolatries of the principles of independence, freedom of expression, freedom of belief, and individualism. virtually discarding traditionally universalist values like love, relationship, connection, and community. We are free to believe whatever we want to believe was the new dogma that led to a belief that individual freedom of expression is absolute and our behavior unbounded. Our commitment to social justice remains strong, but it was unfortunately often based on a charity model, an approach where privileged, mostly white folks would seek to bring our considerable financial forces to bear on a problem. It wasn't necessarily about building relationships with those in need, but rather sort of a top-down model based on sincere, although often misguided, commitment to generosity and largesse. Now, I know I'm offering a rather gross generalization about Unitarian Universalism in the latter part of the 20th and the early part of the 21st century, so I'll pause here and say and admit that it was this brand of Unitarian Universalism that attracted and held me when I found our church in the late 1980s. I can still remember my first visit to a Unitarian Universalist congregation with its Harvard-educated minister. I took along my very Catholic older sister, Nancy, and we came home and she bemoaned the lack of God talk. She said, "I can't believe there's a church where they don't even mention Jesus." To which I enthusiastically replied, "Can you believe it? There's a church where they don't even mention Jesus." It was a revelation to me. And I certainly don't want to dismiss all the good works that UUs did during this time, or those among us today who are strongly Unitarian, independent, and/or humanist. Our faith has saved lives, both literally and figuratively, and we have a big enough tent to accommodate theists and atheists alike. But here's what I'm wondering today. Our spiritual theme for the month of November is holding history. So here's what I'm wondering about our history today. What if things had unfolded differently? What if it had been the Unitarians who were submerged when the merger happened? Where and how might we be today had Universalism, rather than Unitarianism, become the dominant culture and theology in our congregations? It's an interesting question. At the risk of offending the diehard Unitarians among us, and I know there are some, so hold your breath, I will just speculate that had the tables been turned, we would be farther down the path that we've more recently set ourselves on than we are. So let me explain what I mean by that. I believe that the hyper-intellectualism and the hyper-individualism of 20th century Unitarian Universalism served to perpetuate and even amplify the historic elitism of early American Unitarianism. And that created and reinforced barriers of entry into our faith for significant segments of the population, including those who didn't go to college, those who didn't own a house, those who didn't own a car. How do people get here, I'll ask, if they don't have a car? Essentially, those who weren't in the upper middle class strata of our society, or even better off than the upper middle class. When Unitarian Universalists bemoan our lack of diversity, I believe we can trace our homogeneity directly back to our history. And it's not just the socioeconomic factors that contribute to that homogeneity. It's theological as well. For a long time, our fierce attachment to humanist principles served to exclude from our sanctuaries anyone who held on to any theistic beliefs. While we proclaimed our respect for theological diversity, we actually disdained, either openly or covertly, those who would profess a belief in God or, God forbid, Jesus. For decades following the merger, we paid lip service to theological diversity while we sent pretty clear messages that skepticism, criticism, and downright dogged disbelief were the only belief systems truly welcome in our churches. Atheists, and to a lesser degree agnostics, were embraced, while theists, and certainly anyone with Christian leanings, hid in the corners if they stuck around at all. I used to say that the two most persecuted groups in our congregations are Republicans and Christians. And I believe that statement used to be true, although I think we're doing better with the latter these days. And that's the good news. That's the good news. While our history has held us back, we are still moving forward. The theological pendulum, if you will, has swung, which swung pretty far to the atheist end of the spectrum, began to swing back towards the center about 15 or 20 years ago. UUs began to realize that feeding our heads was fine. It was satisfactory, but it was neither satisfying nor sufficient. We needed to feed our spirits as well. Unitarian Universalists began to openly express their cravings for soul food. There is today, to an extent not experienced since the merger, an eagerness to explore our connection to something greater than ourselves that some of us even have the courage to call God out loud. We are beginning to accept and even striving to embrace the understanding expressed by philosopher and Jesuit priest Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. At the same time, we've awoken to the exclusionary impact of our hyper-individualism and our intellectual and socioeconomic elitism. And this is more good news. As a faith, we've made a commitment to overcoming it. Our commitment to the eighth principle, to becoming actively anti-racist and building the beloved community, includes a commitment to facing our past openly and honestly, and striving to overcome parts of that past that have been holding us back. History is a strong force and a strange bedfellow. As with any partner, we are wont to claim the good parts and ignore the rest. Whether or not we are honest about our history in its entirety, the good, the bad, and the ugly, it is a part of us and it has its hold on us. It is who we are, whether we're willing to admit it or not. But fortunately, as Chrissy pointed out, ours is a living tradition of faith that commits itself to learning and growing, to facing our demons with courage and working to expel them. Our history may be a part of us, but that doesn't mean that we cannot part from it. So may we commit to facing our past with honesty and courage so that we may chart a course to a brighter, more inclusive future. Blessed be. Amen. And now Joy is going to share a closing hymn with us, and she and I picked this hymn because it centers love, and it talks about all of the things we can do even if we don't have love, but that they're meaningless if we don't have love. Placing love in the center is such a powerful concept and a very, very universalist one, I might say. Joy?
Striving so my love profess, but not be given by love within. The prophet soon turned strangely thin. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control, our spirits long
Thank you, Joy. And so, Chrissy, would you like to extinguish our chalice for us? And please join us in saying the words that'll be up on your screen in just a moment. And at home, if you'll join us as well in extinguishing your chalice. Although we now extinguish our chalice flame, may we hold its warmth in our hearts in all the days ahead. Before we say our benediction together, I would just like to remind you that the Yuckies will be selling pies outside on the sidewalk.
Yeah, and if there are Yankees in here, you need to go get set up.
And I would like to say it would be wonderful to be able to meet and mingle after the service. We do not have a coffee hour here because we don't want to promote that kind of interaction, but if you would please exit the service after we're done, and you can drop your name tags in a basket that's on the greeter station. If outside you'd like to stop and chat a little bit with each other, outside is safer than inside, and so we encourage you to do that. I want to once again thank Chrissy and Joy for leading worship today with us. Also want to thank Soren Spring again, who is our online host, and all of our tech people who do such an amazing job to make this service happen. This is the first time we've done this inside, and I think it went pretty smoothly, so we are very grateful. I'll let you know that for all you at home, there were about 58 or 60 of you joining us online, so it's great to have that online congregation join us. And you may stay on after the service if you'd like to meet in a breakout room for virtual coffee hour. Thank you, Lori, and your hospitality team for helping us with this service as well. So let us rise in body or in spirit. We will unmute our Zoom participants at home, and I invite you to hold. So we are virtually holding hands with those who are joining us from afar, and together we'll say our benediction.
Those who come, grace and life, may life return your affection. And for those who come past, may a way be found and courage to take it step by step.
Amen.